today we have a new letter from Archbishop Vigano, in which he points out that Francis just promoted someone who had been instrumental in the cover-up of the crimes of Marcel Maciel in the Legionaries of Christ, and that Francis has a history of promoting this man so that he could be in the position to receive his latest promotion, organizing the coming conclave that will replace Francis when that time comes. It's a doozy of an accusation if you understand the implication Vigano is making. Here are the words of Archbishop Vigano, with no further comment. The Faithful Have a Right to Know, by Archbishop Vigano. We have just been through one of the most disgraceful episodes in which we have seen the Prince of Lies at work to discredit the book of Pope Benedict XVI and Cardinal Robert Sarah by covering them with vile insults and vulgar insinuations, and the Pope's jailer, as Judas, now also acting as a hitman. And once again, we find ourselves dealing with another masterpiece of deception, the confirmation by the Pope of the elections of the new Dean and Vice Dean of the College of Cardinals by the Cardinal Bishops. This has gone almost unnoticed, and yet conceals a devious strategy. It should be borne in mind, in fact, that in June 2018, Pope Francis increased the number of cardinal bishops, which had remained unchanged for centuries, promoting 4 new ones in one fell swoop. In this way, he secured a majority in favor of him, as he has always done with the creation of the new members of the College of Cardinals. To Cardinal Giovanni Battista Re, appointed Dean of the College at the age of 86, and therefore excluded from the next conclave, I wish an even longer life than that of his father, but his appointment is a cover for that other more effective appointment, of Cardinal Sandri, which has been prepared ad hoc to pilot the next conclave, secundum Franciscum, that is, according to an updated and augmented edition of the St. Gallen Mafia. I have a long-standing friendship with Cardinal Sandri that dates back to the time shared in the Pontifical Ecclesiastical Academy. Then, during 11 years in the same office as secretaries to 3 substitutes of the Secretariat of State, and 7 years of collaboration once he was appointed substitute for general affairs in the Secretariat of State, having returned after just 6 months from his mission as nuncio to Mexico. Amicus Plato, sed magis amica veritas. Plato is my friend, but truth is a better friend. This maxim, attributed to Aristotle, then taken up by Plato towards Socrates and later by Cicero, is explained by St. Thomas Aquinas in Sententia Libra Ethicorum, Liber 1, Lectio 6, number 4-5, as follows, in English. That truth should be preferred to friends he proves in this way. He is the greater friend for whom we ought to have the greater consideration. Although we should have friendship for both truth and our fellow man, we ought rather to love truth, because we should love our fellow man, especially on account of truth and virtue. Now truth is a most excellent friend of the sort to whom the homage of honor is due. Besides, truth is a divine thing, for it is found first and chiefly in God. He concludes, therefore, that it is virtuous to honor truth above friends. Which is why what I am about to write concerning Cardinal Leonardo Sandri is inspired solely by the friendship that he has bound me to him for almost 50 years, for the good of his soul, for the love of the truth who is Christ himself, and for the Church, his bride, whom we serve together. In the first audience that Francis granted me after the one on June 23, 2013, that I have already mentioned in my first testimony, in which he asked me about Cardinal McCarrick, he asked me a similar question. What is Cardinal Sandri like? Caught by surprise by the question about a dear friend of mine, and feeling put on the spot, I did not answer. Then Francis, joining his hands in a characteristically Italian gesture, waved them back and forth, as if to say that Sandri knows how to get by, and he looked me in the eye, seeking my consent to his suggestion. So I told him in confidence, Holy Father, I don't know if you are aware that Nuncio Justo Muller, president of the Pontifical Ecclesiastical Academy, was removed from the Apostolic Nunciature in Mexico because he opposed the directives coming from the Secretary of State to cover up the very serious accusations against Marcel Maciel. This is what I told the Pope, so that he would take it into account and eventually remedy the injustice that Archbishop Muller had suffered for not compromising himself, for remaining faithful to the truth, and for love of the Church. I reaffirm this truth here so as to honor this faithful servant of the Holy See, on whose tomb in the Cathedral of Almeria, Spain, I celebrated a Holy Mass of suffrage. I already wrote in my first testimony that the person chiefly responsible for covering up the misdeeds committed by Maciel was then Secretary of State Angela Sodano, whose recent acceptance to resign as Dean of the College of Cardinals was linked to his involvement in the Maciel affair. He, in addition to protecting Maciel, is certainly no stranger to McCarrick's promotions. Meanwhile, Cardinal Francis Arens deserves to be recognized for having opposed within the Congregation of the Doctrine of the Faith Sodano's attempt to cover up the Maciel case. Unfortunately for him, Sandri also allowed himself to be involved by Sodano in this operation to cover up Maciel's horrible misdeeds. To replace Archbishop Muller in Mexico City, it was necessary to appoint a person of unfailing loyalty to Sodano. Sandri has already given proof of this as assessor for the section of General Affairs in the Secretariat of State. Serving at the time as nuncio in Venezuela for just a little over 2 years, he was transferred to Mexico. I was a direct witness to these shady maneuvers, which those in charge would describe as normal personnel transfers, through a conversation they had on January 25, 2000, the feast of the conversion of St. Paul, while we were on our way to the basilica that bears his name, for the closing of the week of prayer for Christian unity. The chain linking the dates of these transfers is very significant. On January 19, 2000, Archbishop Giorgio Zur, who had been president of the Pontifical Ecclesiastical Academy for only 1 year, was transferred to Moscow. On February 11, 2000, Archbishop Justo Muller, who at this point had been in Mexico for just 2.5 years, was appointed president of the PAE. On March 1, 2000, Archbishop Sandri was transferred to Mexico after spending only 2.5 years in Venezuela. Just 6 months later, on September 16, 2000, Sandri was promoted to substitute for the Secretariat of State, i.e., Sodano's right-hand man. The Legionaries of Christ do not fail to show their gratitude to Sandri. On the occasion of a lunch held in the atrium of the Paul VI Hall to honor the cardinals, including Sandri, who were created at the November 24, 2000 consistory, I was bewildered when Sandri told me in advance what he was about to tell Pope Benedict as he made his entrance. Holy Father, you will excuse me if I don't stay for lunch, but I am expected by 500 of my guests at the Legionaries of Christ. Francis, after having repeatedly and obsessively referred to an unspecified clericalism as the cause of sexual abuse, in order to avoid denouncing the scourge of same-sex attraction, is now flaunting the most unscrupulous clericalism, an accusation he levels at others. He promotes Sandri to cardinal priest in May 2018, and a month later to cardinal bishop, so that he might confirm him as vice dean of the College of Cardinals, a candidate prepared by Francis to preside at the next conclave. The faithful have a right to know these sordid intrigues of a corrupt court. In the heart of the Church, we seem to glimpse the approaching shadow of Satan's synagogue. See Revelation, chapter 2, verse 9. Signed, Carlo Maria Vigano, titular Archbishop of Alpiana, Apostolic Nuncio.